All right, so for section 8.4, still sums of arithmetic series, part B, like I said, because there's a lot of little parts that you can talk about this. So let me give you an idea of what this stuff's going to look like today, at least partly. Okay, so you're going to see this notation. This is sigma. Okay, it's a Greek letter for sums. Okay, and basically that tells you add. Okay, add. So that's telling you to add stuff. Now, there's usually an I equal to right here. All right, and then A to B. And that's telling you you're going to add from the A term to the B term. So maybe it's 1 to 10 or 3 to 8. Okay? Now that I is usually an equation that they give you right there. Okay, so usually it's some kind of equation right there. Now I know this looks kind of weird. Okay, again, this is called sigma notation. Okay, and we use it to add series. Okay, it's just another way for them to say, we want you to add up a certain number of terms. Now you might be saying, well, didn't we learn that yesterday with the big letter S? Yeah, but the big letter S always tells you to add like the first 4 terms, the first 10 terms, the first 30 terms, always the first something term. So you always start with A sub 1 and you keep adding in to a specific point. With this right here, you can start anywhere. Okay? You can start anywhere. Just depends on what term they want you to begin with. So you'll see how it goes right now. So let me show you some examples of what your homework's going to look like. I'm looking really quick. You're going to have 10 of these problems. So we'll do like 3 of them right now. So let me show you a couple of these. Now we're still going to use some old formulas, okay? So here's example number 1. So the formulas from yesterday, they don't disappear. So we're just going to evaluate or just say find the sum. I just remember today there's going to be a lot of people in 8 pushes and they're just going to have to watch the video. So we're just going to find the sum. And this is the first one here. This is actually number 3 on your homework. So they're going to use the letter N instead of the letter I, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. So they want you to add the first 10 terms. So the first term, that's 1, right? 1. And then they say stop till you get to the 10th term, the number on top, okay? So you're going from 1 to 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're going to figure out the first term, the second term, the third term, fourth term, etc., all the way to the 10th term, and then you're going to add it up. Well, that can take a long time. So another way to do it is just to say, I want to use an old formula that we knew, which was this one. And in order to figure out what to put in there, right, they told me to add up the terms. The total number of terms is 10, right? From 1 to 10, there's 10 terms. So they want me to find S sub 10. Okay, this is an old formula from before, like I said, from yesterday. So nothing new. So all I got to do is figure out how many terms do they want me to add up. So I figured that out by looking at these 2 numbers right there. 1 to 10. That's 10 different terms. Okay? How do I know that's 10 terms? Do 10 minus 1. That's 9. And then always add 1. You have to add 1 again. So 10 minus 1 is 9. 9 plus 1 is 10. That's 10 terms. So n equals 10. That's how many terms we have. Okay? So I'm going to write down my formula. S sub 10 is equal to 10 divided by 2. Right? That's using the formula. Now I got to figure out my A sub 1. So my A sub 1 means whatever the first number is that they want you to plug in, which would be right here, okay, the 1, they want you to plug it in and solve. So here we go. First term, 7 times 1 minus 11. Okay, I'm plugging in a 1. That's 7 minus 11, which is negative 4. So negative 4 is my first term of this sequence. So I'm going to write negative 4. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's going to be a plus. So negative 4 is the first term. To find my last term, my a sub 10, right? This is the last term right there. That number, the 10. To find my last term, I'm going to plug in the 10 into the formula. So 7 times 10 minus 11, that's 70 minus 11. So that would be 59. So I'm going to put 59 right there. Okay? So again, to kind of repeat what I did, first I got to figure out how many terms this whole sequence wants me to do. Okay? I got to figure out how many terms the whole sequence wants me to do. So the way I did that is I got this bottom number right here and this top number. I subtract them, and then you always add 1. Okay? So subtract top minus bottom plus 1 all the time. So 10 minus 1 is 9. 9 plus 1 is 10. There's 10 terms. Okay? So subtract the top number minus the bottom number, add 1. So that's 10 terms. And right now it might seem kind of ridiculous. You're like, well, of course there's 10 terms. 1 through 10, that's 10 terms. We're not always going to start from 1. So there's 10 terms, so I put n equals 10. So I wrote this part down right here. 10 divided by 2, because that's n over 2. Then I need to figure out my first term. To figure out my first term, I use this information, the 1. I get the 1 and I plug it into my formula of 7n minus 11. Okay, you can see the work right there on the bottom right. 7 times 1 minus 11 was negative 4. So I put that answer right here, negative 4. Okay, then to find the last term, I'm going to use that number, the 10. I'm going to plug it into the formula. So 7 times 10 minus 11, that's on the bottom right corner. That's 70 minus 11, that's 59. So I put that right there. Okay, so notice I'm responsible for finding all the pieces now. Okay, they're not just giving them to me anymore. I get to find them all. Okay, once I do that though, then it's just like yesterday. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Negative 4 plus 59, that's 55. So that comes out to 275. And there's my sum. It adds up to 275. So like I said, we're going to do more than just 2 of these, just to kind of get you into the practice. Now we're going to do 2 that are considered easier, and then we'll do 2 that are considered a little bit more challenging. But they're not much different from this. So any questions on this one? So remember, there's a lot of places where you got to find information. So let's go to part B, another question from the homework. So they're going to want us to add, we'll do this one here. Notice I'm going to change the, right, so I is equal to from 1 to 7. From 1 to 7 of 10I minus 11. Again, I'm just using a different letter. I mean, it's in the homework like that, but the letter doesn't matter. It's just going to be a different variable. That's all. So remember, they want us to find the sum of all the terms of this function, starting from 1, plugging in a 1, and then plugging in a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and eventually getting to 7. If you find all of those terms and add them together, what do they add up to? Okay, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then adding that. It's going to take too long. So we're going to kind of use our old formula, okay, that we've been using before. This one right here. And just figure out all the pieces that they need. So the first piece you need is to figure out how many terms there are. Okay? Remember, to figure out the number of terms, you're going to take this top number minus the bottom number and then add 1 to it. So 7 minus 1 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. Again, I know that sounds repetitive because of the fact that it's pretty easy to tell there's 7 terms from 1 to 7. But just to kind of get in practice, n is 7. So s sub 7 is 7 over 2. Now I got to figure out my first term and my last term. My first term, I'll plug in the bottom number, a 1. So let me do that on the side here. 10 times 1 minus 11. That's 10 minus 11. That's negative 1. So I'm going to put that right there. Negative 1. Now I'm going to figure out my last term. So to find my last term, I'm going to plug in the top number, the 7, into the equation. So 10 times 7 minus 11. That's 70 minus 11. So that's 59. So 59 goes there. Okay. Now I'll add the two numbers on the right side because I can't divide 7 divided by 2. So I'm just going to leave it like that. But adding on the right side is going to be 58. Half of 58 is 29. I don't know what 29, well, I guess, what is it? 30 minus 1 times 7. So that's 210 minus 7. So it's 203. So it's 203. That's going to be your answer. So remember, your job is to figure out what is n, what is a sub 1, what is a sub n, my last term. You're figuring those things out. All right, so we're going to do this example here. The one thing, like I said earlier, was that not all of them start from 1. Okay, this one starts from 4. Okay, so they're saying from 4 to 16. So there are not 16 terms. Okay, there's not 16 terms here. How many terms are there here? So subtract, right? 16 minus 4, that's 12. And then add 1 all the time. 12 plus 1 is 13. There's 13 terms. Okay, to go from 4 to 16, right? I mean, you can count on your hands, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's 13, right? 13 terms. So don't just subtract them because or else you're always going to be one term short. Okay, so all right, here we go. S sub n is equal to n over 2, a sub 1 plus a sub n. We know n is going to be 13 because 16 minus 4 plus 1 is 13. You always add 1 after you do the subtraction of the top number minus the bottom number. So S sub 13 is going to be 13 divided by 2. And then I got to find my first term and my last term. So I'm going to plug in a 4, the bottom number, into the equation. So 10 times 4 minus 6, that's 40 minus 6. So that's 34. So I'm going to put a 34 right there. And now I got to find the last number. So I'm going to plug in a 16 into the formula. So 10 times 16 minus 6, that's 160 minus 6. So that's 154. I'm going to put 154 there. Now I'm going to add 34 plus 154. So that's 13 divided by 2 times 188. Now 188 divided by 2, that's 94. So 13 times 94. And I don't know what 13 times 94 is right off the top of my head, but I can figure it out. 94 times 13, that's 12. 27, that's 28. 4 and 9, add these together. So 1,222. Let me double check that. That's 2, that's a 12. Yeah, so 1,222. So, I mean, are these very different from the ones that we just did? Same amount of work. The only difference was that your n value is a little tricky when it doesn't start from 1. Okay, it's not just the top number. Because if you just say it's 16, that means you're adding an extra 3 digits. Okay, you have to subtract and add by 1. Okay, and that's going to give you the right number. So let's do one more of these, and then I'll show you the last type of problem they're going to have you do. And we're only going to do one example because It's not that hard to figure out. These are the ones that are like brand new. So I want to make sure that we did enough of these to make sure that you guys hopefully get it and get a good idea of how it works. And when my daughter learned this stuff, she was like, "Oh, I hate these problems. They're so difficult to do, and they're just weird." And I'm like, "Well, they're not hard if you know what you're supposed to be looking for." And I asked her, like, "How did your teacher explain it to you?" And she went through this whole process. And I'm like, "Your teacher made it too complicated. Like, it's not that difficult. Use an old formula, plug in values, and you're done." So I had to kind of reteach her how to do it. But again, you're just looking at this, right? We're just looking at this information here. How many terms does this one have? How much? 11. It has 11 terms. How do I know that? 12 minus 2 is 10. Then add 1. You always add 1. Anytime you want to figure out how many things there are, right? You subtract the two sets of things, and then you add 1. So that's just like a little formula. So if someone says, like, how many numbers are there between 10 and 30, right? You subtract them. 30 minus 10, that's 20, and then add 1, 21. There's 21 total numbers between 10 and 30. Okay? A lot of people will say 20 because they just subtracted it, but they're not counting the number they start, right? You always got to start at a specific point. So we know this is 11. So we're going to find S sub 11 equal to 11 over 2 times. Now I got to find my first term. So for my first term, I'm going to plug in the 2, the very bottom number. So plug 2 into 6i plus 1. So that's going to be 6 times 2 plus 1, 12 plus 1. That's 13. So the 13 goes there. Okay. Now to find my last term, I'm going to plug in the 12. The 12 goes into that equation. So 6 times 12 plus 1, what is that, 72 plus 1, so it's 73. All right, so there you go. 13 plus 73, 11 over 2, that's going to be 86. And 86 divided by 2, that's going to be 43. And 11 times 43 is 473. And that's your sum. 473. So hopefully you guys have seen, like, these are considered the hard ones, the ones we just did, the last two, because they don't start at 1, right? So you got to figure out the number of terms, and they don't always match up to the top number. Whereas the ones that start at 1, the end value always matches the top number. When they don't start at 1, they don't necessarily have to, okay? But no matter where you begin, you always have to figure out your end, figure out first term, figure out last term, and the way you do that is by plugging it into the equation, okay? The equation they give you inside of that sigma notation, all right? And remember, that notation sigma means to sum. It means the sum, okay? That's the Greek letter S, okay? So they're using, you know how we use the letter S right here to say we're going to sum? Well, that's what they use. They use this letter because that's what the letter S is in Greek, okay? So uppercase sigma looks like this. Lowercase sigma will look like this. Okay, so that's the Greek alphabet for that. So anyway, let me do the last example for you guys, which is not like this. It's different. And then I'll give you guys the homework. So here's the last example. There's only 4 of these, so I'm going to do one because I don't want to do too many. I want you guys to at least practice it a couple times. We won't do one that looks super easy. Find the number of terms. So find the number of terms, n. Okay, in other words, solve for whatever n is. Okay, whatever n is, that's what we're going to be solving for. And they're going to give you some information. A sub 1 is 11. A sub n is 74, and S sub n is 425. So they told us how much it adds up to. They told us the first term, they told us the last term, they just didn't tell us how many terms. Okay? So we're going to still use that same formula that we were using before, this one right here, the easier one of the two. Okay? We're still using that. But I want you guys to notice, like I said it earlier, they gave us S sub n, A sub 1, A sub n. The only letter left to solve is n. Right? They gave me everything else. So they're not making it tricky. You just have one variable that's left over. That's the one we need. Okay? So, S sub n, they told me it was 425. So there we go, 425. I don't know what n is, so I'm going to write n over 2. And then a sub 1 plus a sub n, that's 11 plus 74. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and add those two things together. 11 plus 74 is going to be 85. So 425 is equal to n over 2 times 85. Now what I'm going to do next is I would normally want to divide 85 by 2, but I can't. Right? 85 can't be divided by 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the 2 and I'm going to multiply it over. Okay? So 425 times 2, that's 850. So 850 equals to 85n. Because n times 85 is 85n, right? All I have to do now is divide by 85. And my answer is 10. Oops. So 10 is equal to n. That's the number of terms. And this is what your homework is like.